How a case is approached from minute one matters, because one misstep can leave so much room for speculation, for doubt, and ultimately a completely solvable case may end up in a stack of unsolved cold cases or become a conspiracy theory where no one can agree on a firm accounting of many of the facts. Hi, Cassie.
Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, creepy people.
Hello. If you're new to our creepy corner of the world, this is PNW Haunts and Homicides, where we chat about true crime, paranormal, and all things creepy in the Pacific Northwest.
We also do a tarot reading at the end of every episode for deeper insight into our topic. So make sure you stick around if you're into that witchy goodness. All right, so today, while you're listening to this, more than likely it's Halloween. That's the day we're releasing this episode. So
I am so excited. I love Halloween.
love Halloween. Halloweeny.
I like weenies too.
Oh boy. Well, get a good chuckle in now, because I'm gonna quash that laughter.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's kind of my thing. You guys, I just have to start this episode by saying that real life and particularly true crime, well, they're both pretty messy. Kind of like when I was trying to put those little drink skewers on with our fancy rosemary and apple.
Ugh.
It's a pretty looking cocktail, though.
Yeah, you'd never know that there was a mess involved.
Yeah, but there was. This wasn't exactly what I thought I was getting into when I started researching the case, and I might have considered going with a different case for Halloween under different circumstances. Maybe something from a bygone era that allowed us all to get a little bit of distance. Celebrate in a more lighthearted way, and maybe you'll wish that I did. I hope not.
We can't all be fun in games all the time.
This is true. This is true.
That's not life, baby.
But this case has almost ripped me in half. I swear. Almost more times than I can count. It made me angry, and I hope there's a lot about this story that makes you angry, but also makes you think. I know that we can't all be out changing the very fabric of society each and every day as individuals, but we can refuse to look away, and we can sit in uncomfortable spaces in the hopes of growing. Please come with us.
I mean, uncomfortable is nice sometimes, right? It makes you enjoy the comfortable.
I'm hoping that's what everybody is going to say.
Yeah. Well, I said it for them.
Perfect. Now, you'll recall we were discussing Emanuel Fair's trial. That's the short little mini sneak peek clip, if you will, that was part of our Halloween collaboration. So that's the case we're talking about today. Spoilers.
Not really spoilers.
No, not at all.
Unless you haven't listened to it, go back maybe.
Yeah, I would say. And there's 2 parts to the collaboration. So if somehow you missed part 2 dropping, go back and listen to that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some fun, creepy stuff in there too.
Yeah, we're actually in part 2. This case truly spans decades already. Investigators could not establish an exact time of death, instead speculating that Arpana had died at some point early in the morning hours following the Halloween party, sometime between 3 and 8 a.m.
The witching hour.
Yeah. If you're following up, listening to the first segment of this story from the Halloween collaboration, you might also recall that they found Arpana at the foot of her bed. Her autopsy would later show that she died of asphyxia by ligature strangulation. Her manner of death was obviously brutal, but within the report, it was also noted that she had sustained multiple blunt force injuries. However, there are a number of details that we omitted from that short excerpt of the story obviously, for brevity. The attack that she had endured, and specifically the head trauma, resulted in several broken teeth,
Mm.
which is a particular no-no for my brain.
Yeah, as soon as you said teeth, I was like, uh-oh.
Nope.
She hates it.
I hate it. But it's these next couple of details that are upsetting, I think, for all of the brains. But I do think that they're important to share so that you understand the depth of depravity when it comes to her killer. Arpana was also gagged using her own underwear, and duct tape was applied as well to keep that in place.
Oh, God. Using someone's own underwear is just like so, what is that word? Demoralizing?
It is.
Demeaning, all of that.
Yeah. It's
Ugh.
really, yeah. Presumably prior to her assault, though the final detail related to her assault isn't completely clear in regards to the timeline. And I'm going to tell you that final detail now.
Okay.
Prior to the sexual assault, her tampon was removed,
Oh, okay.
which is just, to me, a level of horror that I feel like is probably wrapped up in a lot of shame more than anything
Yeah.
about, female bodily functions. But it really got me in a place that I didn't know I had feels.
Oh.
And I hate it.
Well, even if you don't have shame, which nobody should,
Yeah.
about their womanly
Yes.
bleed, it's fine. It
To
happens.
be clear,
But like, it's just so intimate, I feel
it
like.
is.
Like
Yeah.
really intimate.
Yeah.
I mean, so is sex, obviously, but
Right.
there's just, there's something about that. You're
But
right.
to do that, which is this, my God, a very, like you say, intimate and not in a good way.
Yeah.
There's no positive connotation there. And then to do something this brutal to her, I can't fathom it. You'll also recall the laundry list of odd household items that were used pretty bizarrely, seemingly to eradicate evidence. Bleach, blue toilet bowl cleaner, a common household type of soap, and motor oil.
Ugh, the motor oil thing is just
really freaks me out. Expanding on that, apparently the killer scrubbed her body with bleach.
Oh, scrubbed it?
That's how I've heard it described. Investigators even noting that her hands were stained blue from some type of highly acidic cleaning agent. So I think that's where the toilet bowl cleaner comes in.
What the fuck?
It's very strange. So let's talk about potential perpetrators. Now, before Emanuel was charged, police had another person of interest, several, in fact. One of whom was a neighbor of Arpana's, a white man in his 20s, the same neighbor who'd entered the apartment with Arpana's family friend. Also, notably, someone who was also reportedly considered a suspect in the early days of the case. So these are the two people that discovered her body. One is a neighbor, one is a family friend.
Oh, that sucks to find that and then be also accused.
I could not agree more.
Or suspected, not accused, but suspected.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they suspect you sort of implies an accusation in a way. The initial investigation focused on this individual, and that is the neighbor, who is unlikely to be named in most source material that you would come across in this case, unlike Emanuel, of course. So a lot of source material protects a number of these potential suspects or persons of interest, their names. And unfortunately, obviously, that same level of courtesy or, privacy that they're afforded is not something that you'll see for Emanuel.
I was going to say that's understandable that they wouldn't want to release their names.
Yeah, I feel like it is somewhat unusual. I think more often than not, we see the names of potential perpetrators being
Yeah.
shared. So that kind of, in my mind, that sort of threw up a flag that there's so many of them that have, by and large, remained unnamed. At the time, investigators found the neighbor's activities on the night in question a little bit suspicious. His phone records revealed that he called Arpana at around 3 a.m. on the earliest end of time window of her death. So,
Okay.
why? I just have to say, why?
Hmm.
He said he did not remember making the call.
Okay. Well, come on.
Yeah, I don't love that, but this individual's DNA was also the primary profile found on key pieces of evidence, such as the bottle of motor oil that was discovered in a bag, along with what authorities presumed was the red robe that Arpana wore on the dates in question, as well as inside the window of her apartment. So
Oh,
we've got his DNA in one form or fashion
on
in,
the motor oil?
uh huh,
And he wasn't charged?
nope. Other than Fair and the neighbor, no other DNA profiles from partygoers present that night were found on evidence at the crime scene. According to court records, there's still more. Like the lighter that was found in his apartment with a sticky substance on it that could have been motor oil, but investigators never collected it.
What? Okay. So I see that there's some shenanigans going on here.
A little bit. That's one way to put it. Also located in the search was a list of pawn shops that was printed the day that Arpana was killed. Both her phone and digital camera were never recovered that I could determine.
Okay.
I think the thought process there being that maybe this person stole those items and went to pawn them.
Oh, but they never found them at pawn shops or anything, or did they even look?
It's unclear. Yep. So
Caitlin, you're supposed to know everything.
I wish. Several people present the night of the party stated that they saw him, quote, exhibit jealous behavior when she talked to other men at the party.
Ugh.
So, also that. A review of the transcript of his interview with police reveals that he reported hearing sounds coming from her apartment around 3 a.m. But he didn't make much of it and waited until roughly 10 a.m. to call her the next morning. When police looked at his phone, they noted that he had also called her at 2:56 a.m. and 3:02 a.m.
Okay, that sounds like someone who is jealous.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely right before the window of time where she died as well.
And if he's hearing stuff from her room and then was like, "Oh, I didn't think anything about it," but earlier was exhibiting jealous behavior.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so here's probably the best part about this, which it doesn't mean anything. To be clear, I'm not saying that anyone in this case is guilty. When confronted with the evidence that they found in his call log, my notes say, to which he said, "Oh crap," before insisting that he didn't remember why he called her.
Oh, crap.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, guy.
Yeah. Which could be 1,000% accurate. It could be a simple misremembering of the facts after the fact, when alcohol was likely heavily involved for many of these people. Or it could have been a butt dial for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean,
Drunk dialing is a thing, butt
yeah,
dialing is a thing. But still.
especially at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was still at a point in time where you very literally could butt dial. You can't really do that now. Everyone's got their phone, with a passcode or.
Yeah.
But of course, I saved the most bizarre detail for last. that, viewed in a certain light, is perhaps the most damning. According to interviews by the police, it was at roughly 10 a.m. on the morning that Arpana was killed that this man's decided to drive 2 hours up to Canada.
Okay.
Where he, wait for it, tried to blow through the gates without a passport. He told detectives he wanted to, quote, explore.
Honey, go south.
Yeah, that is a little bit.
But seriously, like if you're going to try to blow through a border, I wouldn't have tried Canada. But
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that it was closer.
Yeah.
That is like not okay.
It's very erratic. It's very strange. This next paragraph, I'm just taking directly from a Rolling Stones article that primarily focused on Emanuel's life and the impact of the case. At the end of the interview, when investigators had started putting pressure on him, he asked investigators to turn off the recording, and he discussed something that can't be found in the police record.
What?
When asked what the neighbor said in a pre-trial interview obtained by the Suspect podcast, Detective Coates simply said, "I don't recall." Despite the apparent evidence against him, investigators let him leave the police station with his BlackBerry, according to police records, which he subsequently scrubbed. So when you're asked, what did the neighbor who tried to literally flee the country say in his pretrial interview? I don't recall. Also, we let him leave the station with his BlackBerry and it has subsequently been wiped. Just to tidy up that little summary for you in case your brain actually exploded hearing that the first time.
I don't recall where my brain went.
Yeah, through the ceiling, actually.
Wow. Obviously, you know.
She went up to the roof and she took her brain out and she said, "I threw it on the ground."
I was going to say, there's a Caitlin and Cassie brain-shaped hole in the ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, good.
Here's the kind of crazy thing to me. Even if based on some of the DNA and other forensic evidence, the idea might have seemed plausible, ostensibly, the prosecution wanted to charge Emanuel, and only Emanuel, which they did. But they wanted to argue that maybe the neighbor had something to do with it. This next part is about how that shook out. I just can't believe this. Like, yeah, I would say that the neighbor looks a little, maybe not hands perfectly clean on this, but what do I know?
I mean, if his DNA was found on the motor oil that was a part of the crime scene evidence taken, I just feel like
it doesn't look
like
great.
Enough.
Yeah. But it's like they can't make up a clear series of events. They can't figure out who has the motive or
Yeah.
So when you bring a case to court, ideally you want to really know exactly what happened. That's how you get a conviction. Before the trial, it was decided that the evidence linking the neighbor to possible involvement in the crime was admissible. But the prosecution would, of course, argue that incriminating evidence against the neighbor did not inherently mean that Emanuel was innocent, which is true. But for Christ's sake, guys, can you just present a clear case? Anyways, I digress. It seemed far more reasonable that two people who had only just barely met might have teamed up on this horrific crime out of the blue. Because why not, right? I know I don't like to, but I do this. I know that I often assume the worst about men, but this seems a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I agree.
According to the state's case, the neighbor was classified more accurately as an uncharged accomplice rather than the other suspect. Though, to be fair, prosecutors were barred from using the argument that the neighbor and Emanuel had acted as accomplices, given that there wasn't sufficient evidence to support the theory, which no shit, Sherlock. The State Court of Appeals upheld the court's decision, and the state Supreme Court ultimately declined to review it. This is just so ridiculous. Like, if you can't figure out who you think did it and whether or not it was more than one perpetrator, maybe that's not a case we take to court.
I was going to say, maybe you're not ready yet. Maybe sit on that egg a little while and let it hatch.
You put that one back in the oven. She needs to keep cooking. We were restricted in what we could say in that they may have acted together, said Brian McDonald, one of two lead prosecutors on the case. You'll note I did include his name. This restriction allowed the defense to argue that any evidence involving the neighbor should be reasonable doubt as to whether Emanuel committed the crime. Emanuel contends in a lawsuit that authorities, quote, ignored and failed to gather evidence that did not align with their theory of the case. Because, yeah, in case it wasn't already clear, there's a lawsuit.
That's good.
Yeah, I tend to think so. Now, there are additional persons of interest that you'd hear more about in more in-depth coverage in a multi-part, case series. I did not do that.
It's only Halloween for one day.
Yeah, this was already a lot. Some of them were part of a local motorcycle group that Arpana had joined.
Oh, Arpana.
I know.
I love that. Don't love that they're suspected.
Yeah, no, you're going to like this next part even less.
Okay.
Two of the members of the group had a history of sexual crimes, but one in particular had been actively sexually harassing her, reportedly.
Oh.
So that's...
Damn.
Mm-hmm. Depending on how jaded you are, this next part may or may not surprise you at this point. Police also found DNA from a third biker who she had been sleeping with on her costume. That's where they found the DNA. And on the sheet that was draped over her body.
Okay. I mean, if she was already doing it with him, I could see how...
Maybe that was already there.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Additionally, there was another resident at the apartment complex that unfortunately died by suicide just days after her death.
Oh, no.
This individual's DNA was never compared to the crime scene, according to the most recent reporting on the case, based primarily on Emanuel's lawsuit. So, I have every reason to think that I'm not mistaken here. Unfortunately, they did not test that person's DNA against the evidence.
Aww.
So that sucks.
That's unfortunate.
Now, here's where we turn a corner, because this case certainly at least feels more complicated than I understood it to be at the outset. Because there are certainly factors related to the individuals involved in this case that are at least cause for concern or consideration, maybe pause. And that, of course, includes Emanuel. I say this with trepidation because I can't tell you that I've landed on my own personal, solid theory in this case, but I want to represent as much information about every aspect of the case as I can so that you walk away feeling like maybe you can decide for yourself. If it were more clear, I take no issue with roasting the guilty party. The problem is that in a case like this, it just might be too ambiguous to do so with any confidence. Oh, and yeah, we don't want to be sued.
Yeah, no.
So there's that. A handful of years before Arpana's horrific murder, Emanuel Fair had been arrested and charged with raping a minor.
Ew.
According to the 15-year-old victim, he had raped her numerous times, which is unimaginably awful. However, there was an additional altercation that took place in Burien where Emanuel reportedly choked the girl at gunpoint.
Oh, the choking.
Mhm. He was arrested for this crime and ended up pleading guilty to avoid a decade-plus prison sentence, pleading down from second-degree to third-degree rape. Though Emanuel began serving out his 4-year sentence in 2004, he would ultimately be released in less than 3 years. At the time of his release, he was labeled a level 1 offender, meaning he was amongst those considered the least likely to reoffend. If you want to hear another infuriating case about someone labeled a level 1 sex offender, go back and listen to the Richard Gilmore, aka the jogger rapist case.
I remember that. It's the first thing that popped in my head when you said that. I was like, not a fucking another one.
I know.
At gunpoint.
Mhm. Reportedly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Report
I-
allegedly. I get
Yeah.
it.
I mean, he was convicted, so I feel like I'm honestly probably being a bit generous. But we're trying to parse out some nuance here.
Yeah.
However, as is often the case, Emanuel failed to abide by the terms of his release, and ultimately his probation violations landed him in custody of the state again. Once released in the fall of 2006, Emanuel would commence a roughly 3-year-long period of cycling between either homelessness or prison incarceration.
Damn.
This included the period in which Arpana was murdered. He was couch surfing with a friend that lived in the complex on that fateful night. Initially, the friend he had been staying with lied about the fact when questioned by police, but they were later able to determine he had been present by combing through the various photos that partygoers had taken. Many posted to Facebook, as was the norm for many 20-somethings at that time.
Yeah. Social media will get your ass.
Eh. Once jailed, he would remain there for 8 years, 7 months, and 14 days. Let's recall that this is all without ever being convicted of a crime.
Jesus.
At least not this crime.
That's a long time, though.
Yes.
I probably said that last time, but oh my God.
During this period, he was primarily isolated, due in large part to the fact that the facility was not designed for long-term imprisonment.
Okay.
Throughout the duration, he maintained his innocence. So, what does it tell you when someone has basically overstayed their welcome in a facility that's not meant for someone to be held long term? There's so many things wrong with that.
And to be
Even-
held for 8 years when you're
Yeah.
saying you're innocent, if you're really innocent and then you're being kept in solitary, oh my God, that just fucks with you.
Yeah. So, I would implore you to listen to this next section with an open mind. Not because I necessarily feel confident that Emanuel is completely innocent, but because we're all supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And because at this stage, whether what's been shared with you up to this point has you convinced one way or another regarding Emanuel's guilt or innocence, or another suspect's for that matter, it's important to note that there's no official resolution to the case. How a case is approached from minute one matters, because one misstep can leave so much room for speculation, for doubt, and ultimately a completely solvable case may end up in a stack of unsolved cold cases or become a conspiracy theory where no one can agree on a firm accounting of many of the facts. As indie podcasters, we love to show our support of other awesome shows. So stay tuned for the promo we've got to share with you this week.
Let's show them some love. You can find their info in our show notes.
Can you hear me? Good to have you back with us. I hope you don't mind that I am recording for investigative notes. It's a wax cylinder, the only thing we've found that can pick up the voices of people in your condition. My name is Owen von Sid. I am a reclaimer. Do you know what that means? No? Well, I am sorry to inform you that you didn't make it. Please try to remain calm. The worst is over. Nothing can hurt you, not ever again. But the thing that did this to you, it is still out there. That is what we do. I wake unfortunate souls, such as yourself, hear their stories. Then my associates and I see to it that whoever or whatever did this to you is dealt with. Now, let's begin. When you are ready, tell me, how did you die?
Ghost Wax is an anthology horror podcast from Far and Tall Tales Productions. New episodes releasing weekly. Look for us wherever you get your podcasts.
You guys, we're back!
And don't worry, we did get more wine.
Well, of course. Emanuel would ultimately face 2 trials. In our previous discussion of the case, we left off at the first in 2017. The trial ended in a hung jury because of one juror who said, and yes, this is a quote, after the trial, that when he looked at Emanuel, he saw a, quote, thug with tattoos on his hands.
Okay.
The second trial ended in June of 2019.
Jesus.
The jury determined that the detectives and prosecutors had never had a strong enough case against him. He was cleared of all charges and was released, which makes it all seem too easy. Now, 2 years later, he's suing everyone that had the power to put him in that cell. He filed a lawsuit against the county, the city of Redmond, the Redmond Police Department, even the detective on the case. The prosecutor, amongst many others, were later added to the complaint by his legal team. Quoting again here, the suit contends that he never would have been in that cell, and certainly not for years, if he weren't a Black man with a criminal record. The suit describes an investigation that was so badly handled, it can only be characterized as bizarre.
Yeah. Holy shit.
What's upsetting about that is that it's really not that bizarre.
Yeah.
It's baffling, but I would argue it is something we're all a little too accustomed to.
Yeah. Pretty common.
And again, I'm not clamoring saying that I believe him to necessarily be innocent, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. Rolling Stone's account of Emanuel's case and the investigation into Arpana's murder is based on more than 1,000 pages of case files and legal documents. They show that there was persuasive evidence against at least 6 other suspects that the detectives were investigating, none of whom were Black, and none of whom spent a day in jail for Arpana's murder. His lawsuit claims the detectives on the case ignored and failed to gather evidence that did not align with their theory of the case. But it also alleges they treated Emanuel so differently than the white suspects that the treatment can only be viewed as racial discrimination.
It's very clear.
I mean, if that's not what it is, then they really fucked themselves.
Yeah.
They really shot themselves in the foot by, just bungling through.
Yeah.
The case files illustrate a number of breaches of protocol, some characterized as careless errors, which is not something I ever want to see in connection with a murder investigation.
You'd hope.
Just a few examples, such as not training their detectives to change gloves between DNA samples.
What the fuck year is this?
I literally don't remember. I think it's like 2009.
Way after CSI. Like, these things, even if you're not trained.
You should
right?
know.
Jesus, really? They didn't change their effing gloves.
Mhm.
You have to do that while handling food.
And also not securing key locations of the crime scene. There's more. To calling in a famous psychic medium to weigh in on the case, which, do you, boo? But
Yeah.
you don't get to do that when you've done all of the other things that predate that.
Yeah. Doing that should just supplement all of the right things you do.
And there's a lot of people that would say, no, you never do that. So I feel as though we're being fairly generous, and I think it's because we're witches. But the case against Emanuel that led to his nearly 9 years spent behind bars relied heavily on DNA evidence. Trace amounts found on Arpana's neck, her robe, and the duct tape used to restrain her. But understanding how some of that evidence could have been mishandled certainly muddies the water.
Mm-hmm.
It also seems fair to say that Emanuel's background likely led to bias as well. When they ran a background check and discovered that he had a record, they may have immediately thought they'd found their man. Though the bulk of the report showed mostly juvenile offenses like possession of drugs and an unlicensed weapon, there was a charge that would have stood out from 2004. The third-degree rape charge. He had entered an Alford plea in that case, which means that he accepted the plea agreement while still maintaining his innocence. A common tactic when you can't afford to go to trial.
Oh, that just makes me so sad. Because what if he is innocent of all of it?
Mm-hmm. He spent 3 years in prison for that charge. In a 2016 pretrial interview obtained by the Suspect podcast, Detective Coates was asked if the prior conviction was significant to his investigation. He replied, "If you've done it before, you'll do it again."
Oh, come on.
Which I hate how much it brought up Richard Gilmore for me, because that's exactly what I would say about him.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm wrong.
I fucking hope so too.
Which may well be at least anecdotally correct. I think there are statistics to back that up with certain types of crimes, but it doesn't necessarily look great to have said that on the record regarding this case.
Yeah, because you're never going to get rid of that. You're always going to have that bias now.
Yep. But of course, it was the testing of the DNA that really got us here. His DNA matched a sample found on Arpana's robe that was found at the crime scene, which, as you'll recall, was an unsecured apartment unit and the complex dumpster, essentially.
Mm.
They also confirmed that he was a match to DNA connected to the roll of duct tape that was used in the crime scene as well, which would be damning, but I feel as though there could be plenty of reasonable explanations on Halloween night for him to have touched that in a completely unrelated manner. Doesn't that seem like something, like part of your costume is, coming apart? Maybe you need a piece of duct tape, or I don't know. I just feel like in a big group of drunk people, presumably on Halloween night at a Halloween party in costumes, like something breaks. I came up with a few different ideas for like why maybe that happened.
Yeah.
Why would you need duct tape? What would you need it for? Why would there be a perfectly reasonable, like, alternate story behind that?
Well, people use duct tape all the time. It's a staple. So I think it's less suspicious than the fucking motor oil.
Yeah, I have to agree. I have to agree. But it's hard to know one way or the other. There was also a match to a tiny sliver of DNA, so small that it had to be sent to a specialized lab on the front of Arpana's neck. So, but I have to wonder if our evolving understanding of touch DNA in more recent years perhaps changes the perception of how valuable this particular sample is to the prosecution's case. It's entirely possible in certain situations, especially if, you were engaged in some type of an intimate or sexual encounter that was consensual, that you could leave DNA behind on someone.
Yeah.
So this case is really one of the first where I thought to myself, wow, is that even evidence? And I'm certainly not going to I'm not going to say one way or the other. I don't have enough detailed in-depth knowledge of how that DNA testing is done, what the sample size is, but it's minute. It's done by a specialty lab, and it definitely makes you wonder.
Did they say what it was? What if he just like
No.
sneezed on her?
Yeah, that's the other thing is, I probably could have dug around in
Yeah.
court records to find out, like, okay, is this blood? Is this semen? Is this spit? But to me, it almost is like, if it's really that minute, it almost doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What about a hug or something? What if, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Quite literally, I've been hearing more and more about cases where people are convicted on, such minute samples, or, this kind of the principle of it being touch DNA, and it really sets people up to look guilty when they're not, because the jury is made up of people like me who don't really understand that, like, this is minute, and they're not going out of their way to explain that.
Mm.
Police files show that there are multiple other men in Arpana's life that had as much, if not more, evidence against them, and several more that were never thoroughly investigated. The key difference between them, the suit alleges, is that none of the other men were Black. Under the law, probable cause requires you to look at the whole picture. You can't leave out the fact that there was basically everyone else's DNA at the scene too, and they did. And that's a quote actually taken from a statement provided by Emanuel's legal team. And you know what? They're not wrong,
No.
because they're lawyers, so they checked.
They lawyered hard.
They lawyered so hard. His aunt and uncle showed up at the courthouse every day during his trial.
Oh.
Whenever his case was on the docket, even if he wasn't going to be there, they packed lunch and snacks for long hours spent on hard courthouse benches. Now, his aunt describes that time as, understandably, the worst years. Emanuel now lives with the couple as he attempts to rebuild his life, but he's struggled finding suitable long-term employment. Which makes sense. But prepare yourself, because you're going to be super pissed about some of the employment that he has found. According to the Rolling Stone, since his release, he exists in a strange, systemic purgatory. A man who was incarcerated for nearly a decade but never convicted of a crime. Emanuel says that while he was in jail, he dreaded the possibility of being convicted and exonerated. His lawyers say that in some ways, at least, he would have been better off if he had been. His lawyer said, let's imagine that Emanuel was wrongfully convicted. He would have spent a number of years in prison, but when he got out, he would be on parole. There would be people to help him get a job, to help him get his feet on the ground, some very, very needed mental health care. He suffers from depression, anxiety, and PTSD. But because he wasn't convicted, he's got nothing.
They don't do anything for you?
Nope. And I said, you're going to hate what kind of work he has found. He has worked in security.
I was going to say security.
Which is just, for anyone that's been convicted of a crime previously, this is prior to the crime that we're even talking about today. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, but security, You should feel secure.
It boggles the mind. And this next part, it really makes me want to cry. Emanuel says that he was reluctant to file his lawsuit at first, knowing that Arpana's family still hasn't gotten justice. There's no resolution for this case, no resolution for her.
He said that? That just makes me feel like he is innocent. I mean, it could be for show.
Yeah.
But I just don't know why you would say something like that. Like, just never talk about it again.
Right.
I mean, you're in a lawsuit, but still.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It really makes you think. And I definitely, I'll show you some of the photos that I found, and you can help me pick out our photos for for any of our posts this week. But my God, to look at some of these photos, I just think it's going to be a tough thing for someone to convince me that this is the guy. And the fact that the Alfred plea in the case where he was convicted, it's a really sad story from every single angle. So,
because he never got the chance the first time to prove he was innocent.
Yeah.
He just had to do that.
Yeah. So happy fucking Halloween. This was it was a really rough one.
Do you see these? I have goosebumps all over me.
Yeah, my feet have been getting really chilled. That's why I have one leg up in my chair.
It didn't start until you said that quote. And then I just all of a sudden got all my hairs standing up.
I've had the chilly willies for about 3 or 4 minutes now.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah. So you think we should do some tarot?
Yeah, let's do some tarot. Let's do the more actual Halloween-y stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it always makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to end it.
I think so. Tarot?
Tarot? Okay. We have a beautiful setup today by Caitlin.
By Caitlin? For Caitlin?
On Caitlin?
What?
Question mark? We have an orb visitor today. We have the light shining just right on the camera that we have a little green orb back there.
Oh.
We have beautiful incense today.
We do.
What flavor did we choose for today?
This one says positive vibes.
Oh, that's a great thing to burn.
Yeah.
Especially right now.
Yeah. I felt like that seemed right.
Okay. What remind me her name? I forget.
Arpana.
I was like, I know it. It's just not coming to me in this moment. Arpana. Thinking about her. This possibly innocent man's Emanuel.
Mm-hmm.
I only knew that because like that's an easier name to remember. So
Well,
don't
and
get offended.
it was very fresh because that's the part of the case that we were
Yes,
talking
yes.
about at length. Okay.
I just love the name Arpana too. It's so pretty.
It is pretty.
I'm just going to keep saying it so that I remember it for always.
That's pretty good.
We have a nice apple and rosemary garnish that you did not just see fall apart.
No. We are drinking a combination of the cranberry cheers, truly, and Vanna that. Yeah, she's doing excellent work over there. It's a spiced apple wine, witch's brew.
It says drink up witches on the top.
Drink up witches. I should have worn that shirt again.
You should have.
Yeah.
Yours matches.
Yeah. Well, and it's in the shot from me and Chris in the kitchen. Well, I have a purpose for that photo.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of Ouija, I learned something I didn't really know before.
Tell me.
So apparently a Ouija board that's just a decoration and not meant for portal spirit communication purposes won't accidentally communicate with the spirit for you. So,
Well,
just
that's
so you know.
good.
Yeah. Which I kind of suspected, but I don't know. People were like worried about their decorations, and I have a lot of Ouija decorations. So.
This is literally the only thing that I own, and I felt like I thought about that today.
That's the only thing she owns.
Am I inviting? It's the only Ouija. Am I inviting something to come home with me by like wearing this?
No.
Am I going out into the world? I felt like no, but
if you're not intending to, then you're not.
I never intend to. Let the record state clearly that I never intend to.
Okay, so we got the star in reverse. And it's a cute little ghosty pouring out some jugs.
Jugs.
We like them jugs around here.
Okay. Are you ready for this? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Ready.
Our keywords for the star are happiness, hope, light at the end of the tunnel, and good fortune.
Oh.
Okay. And so similar to the visual in our card imagery here, this lovely card often portrays a nude female figure in or beside a pool of water. She too is pouring from jugs. So very, very on point with the ghosty. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, she pours the contents of one pitcher into a stream and the other onto the ground, showing the connection between the two feminine elements, water and earth. Stars shine in the background, sometimes in a circle or a halo-like formation around her. The naked woman represents truth and purity. Did you see how that word just like almost wouldn't come out of my mouth?
It's like you were burning from the inside.
From the inside out.
So pure.
The jugs contain the waters of life. Okay, and that's all I'm going to read because I think on the description, otherwise, it differs with this one. So I'm gonna continue on. There's an extra excerpt.
Okay,
I'm gonna read that first.
You always look at me with that eye, like you know something I don't.
I do. Hope, which whispered from Pandora's box only after all the other plagues and sorrows had escaped, is the best and last of all things.
I feel like that's very fitting for this.
Wow.
There was a lot of hurt on a lot of sides.
Yeah. Okay, listen to this. Reversed interpretation says, trust life and its processes and yourself. The reversed star can mean you're following your path in a private way instead of shining your light into the outer world. The blessings you receive may be spiritual rather than material. Perhaps you feel devitalized, uninspired, or low on self-esteem at this time.
Oh.
After you attune yourself to what your soul needs, you'll feel more energized and in harmony with who you truly are. In a reading about money, you may feel disappointed because a hoped-for payment or payoff gets delayed. Even though you're trying hard, your efforts don't bear much fruit. The time may not be right yet. Don't give up.
Do you know how long this
The lawsuit?
Yes, thank you.
Um,
Words.
I don't. The details on the timeline of the lawsuit aren't front of mind for me, so
Okay.
I'd have to check.
I just hope that doesn't take as long.
I guess.
As the
Can you
other child.
imagine? Yeah, just a casual 20 years. If the reading is about your job, you may be hiding your light under a bushel. Perhaps you don't realize your true abilities and thus aren't getting ahead as quickly as you could. The star reversed can also represent disillusionment, disenchantment, or lack of inspiration. Oof.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, oh boy. In a reading about love, this card can mean your expectations are unrealistic. You're searching for perfection, which can never be attained, or it can indicate you aren't seeing your partner or your relationship clearly. Like maybe you actually didn't have one with Arpana and that really pissed you off.
Oh, I don't
I don't
like
know.
that.
I don't like it either, but here we are. There's one more extra excerpt.
Okay.
I saved it for the end. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of confidence, but I do have some hope
Some
left.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to. Otherwise, what the fuck is the point?
What is there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I was thinking heavy about Arpana, obviously, when I was shuffling. And I just feel like she is just a star, you know?
Cassie, did you notice on the altar,
Mm.
the incense burner I have is decorated in stars?
Yeah.
I put out these citrine stars.
That's right.
And I pointed out to you when we were at Curiosities earlier, a really cool, kind of like a wrought iron looking star. Stars have been everywhere.
Everywhere. That's really interesting. She was with us. Maybe she knew we were going to talk about her today.
Do you want to hear something even wilder?
Maybe.
I watched the rest of Practical Magic last night.
Aww.
Chris had never seen it. And
wait. What?
I know. I was like, well,
Christopher.
we're not getting married unless you watch this. So
Good.
buckle up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you didn't see it as a child, it probably doesn't hold the same charm. So, but he's a lovely man, so he watched it.
Good sport.
Yeah.
Football.
Do you remember what she says when she does her spell as a little girl? All of the different requirements for the man that she would fall in love with.
Mm-hmm. The star is his favorite shape.
Uh-huh.
Well, should we cheers and happy
Cheers.
Halloween, everybody?
Yeah.
We hope that you have a very fucking safe Halloween, please.
Yeah,
We've
please
said it
do
before,
that.
but we'll
Yeah.
keep saying it.
If you loved listening to that tarot reading and you want to see it with your eyeballs,
Ooh, creepy eyeballs.
yeah, become a member of our Patreon, where a video of every tarot reading is uploaded with the ad-free version of the episode each week.
And we pulled a card for Patreon today, a Halloween tarot reading.
They got their own.
Yeah.
We have a new member of the Patreon. Speak of the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, thank you for joining us. We've actually met John in real life, in IRL,
Yes, we have.
which I realize is like saying ATM machine, but whatever. Deal with it. We met them at the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival.
John and Sean just happened to have started their own podcast called Sins and Survivors. And it is about cases in Las Vegas specifically.
Yes. And they do really like to try to focus on cases that have sort of an element of domestic violence. So a serious bummer, but a really, really important topic.
Yeah. And Sean works in something that
She
has to do with
does.
domestic violence. So
Yeah.
she's kind of an expert.
If you listen to the show, you'll get it.
Yeah.
You will totally understand. If you can't support us monetarily, no worries, because the easiest ways to support are absolutely free.
Tell everyone and anyone you come into contact with about us, unless they're like a bad person.
Yeah.
Then maybe don't.
We don't necessarily need listeners that badly, I guess.
Because they probably wouldn't leave us a 5-star review like you would on any platform.
Yeah. I mean, that's really solid reasoning, I feel. If you have any true crime, paranormal, or witchy stories to submit for our listener appreciation episodes, also known as Creepy People Chronicles, please email us at pnwhauntsandhomicides@gmail.com, or you can use our handy-dandy Google contact link in the episode description. Or if you want to go to our website, there's ways to do all of the things from there as well.
You're always welcome to remain anonymous if you choose to send in a story, and they don't even have to be from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to take a little vacation.
Yeah, we're just touring around the world, you know.
Yeah. As opposed to what is typically a very dark and dreary staycation.
Yeah.
Follow us on all of the socials if you don't want to miss out on photos of our tarot cards, the beautiful altar setups, and a lot of backstage shenanigans. We make a lot of fun stuffs.
Yeah, we do. You can find our website and Linktree in the description of this episode to check out all of the super creepy fun we have to offer.
All of it, man.
Y'all.
Have a creepy-ass Halloween.
Bye. We'll still see you next Tuesday. We're not going to change into different people, especially mermaids, because I don't really like the water that much.
I love the water.
Oh, you can become a mermaid.
Okay.
Yeah. You be a mermaid. I especially won't be because I'm a dead mermaid and I don't want to be that for sure. So
yeah. In keeping with our distinct and very oftentimes differing personalities, she's a dead mermaid and I'm like, yay, pretty mermaid.
It's going to be such a funny picture we're about to take.
I have a mermaid purse. Okay.
So cute.
On that note, bye.
Bye. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Weenies. I am a dead